Thank you so much, Shannon, and good evening, and welcome back to my studio. My name is Bill Platz, and I'm very delighted to be conducting this final workshop in this series, Draw Along with the Dead. I'd like to thank Shannon and the team at QAGOMA, and I'd also like to echo paying my respects to the Jaguar and Turrbal people, extending those respects to any First Nations peoples that might be joining us here this evening, wherever you may be. I'm sitting here tonight in my studio. We've turned down all the lights, and I'm sitting in a dramatic pool of really, really bright light, a strong spotlight, because tonight we're going to look at the Baroque. We're going to look at some of the Baroque masterpieces that are in the European Masterpieces from the Met show on right now at GOMA. We're going to talk a little bit about some of those methods, why they look the way they look, and how you can achieve some of those same effects in your drawings. And we're going to have then Atticus and Rachel come in, set up here on the stage. We're going to put some really hot light on them, which is going to create deep dark shadows, and we're going to all draw together in the dark manner. I'm also going to be showing you another new technique for drawing tonight, and we'll kick over to my little demo area in just a minute, which we have all veiled so it doesn't spill too much light into the rest of the studio. I'd also, before we get started here this evening, I'd like to just say thanks. Thanks for having me. Thanks for taking the time to sit in and draw with us here this evening. I'd like to send out a special thanks to anybody who's been here for all three of the workshops. If you've done all the Draw Along with the Dead, the laying in wet ground, laying in dry ground, and now tonight the dark manner, thank you so much for supporting us and just drawing, and contributing to the culture of drawing. I will give a special thanks now to Atticus and Rachel, our extraordinary models, and the work that they've been doing for us through this series. And we'll have a special chance to thank them again at the end. And I'd like to send out a special hello and thanks to all of my students from the Queensland College of Arts. I know a lot of those students have been joining us for these sessions, and it's good to see y'all. All right, now let's get started. Tonight, we're going to look at three paintings that are on display right now in GOMA as part of the European Masterpieces show. And they're three paintings that exemplify a few qualities of light and shadow. And they attach themselves to a moment in European painting history from the 16th through to the 17th century and on to the 18th century, where artists were really exploring this really theatrical kind of lighting that you see as I move in and out of the shadows and the light here. A very theatrical lighting and deep, dark shadows, and bodies would move in and out and weave in and out of these shadows in a really, really beautiful way. And this type of painting and drawing was called painting and drawing in the dark manner. And the Italian word which meant dark was tenebrozzo, Tenebroso. And that method became known as tenebrism. Tenebrism is that drawing in the dark manner, painting in the dark manner, where not only is it really, really a kind of exaggerated melodrama of light and shadow, but then you have the exaggerated dramatic content of those paintings and drawings as well. So we're going to look at that tenebrozzo, that dark manner. I'm going to look at a few artists, and we're also going to explore what you see happening on my face and in my body right now, which is this modeling of light and shadow to create form, three-dimensional form, through strong contrast of light and dark, and through the light moving from highlight all the way through transitional values and into deep core shadows and cast shadows. And that modeling of form with light and dark also has an Italian word attached to it. It's chiaroscuro, light dark. And what we're going to be exploring tonight is a very particular type of drawing chiaroscuro, which is using intense, deep darks and then lifting out the lights to get very dramatic effects together. And I'm really looking forward to doing that with y'all. And we're going to dive right into the drawing in just a few minutes. We're going to have Atticus and Rachel posing together here on the stage. The light's going to come down. It's going to illuminate parts of their bodies. Other parts of their bodies are going to drift off into shadows, and it'll be a lot of fun for y'all to experience. Now, we're going to take longer to draw tonight too. Each one of these Draw Along with the Dead workshops, we've been expanding the amount of time that we have to draw and doing slightly longer drawings. And we're going to do that again tonight. You'll have a slightly longer poses, a little bit more time to ruminate on those poses and to develop your drawings, to build build them up. And so I'm really looking forward to that. For those of you who've been there, have been with us in the Draw Along with the Dead series from the beginning, and the first night we were doing a lot of quick sketching. We started to do longer poses last week, and now we're going to do some even longer poses here this evening. All right, so first things first, I'm going to exit my little pool of light here, although it's warm right here in the light. But I'm going to walk over to my desk next and show you a few examples of paintings and talk through those paintings with you, the paintings that are on display right now. And then I'm going to do a demo for you, and show you some methods that you can explore tonight while you do your drawings. All right, y'all. So let's switch over now, and we're going to take a look at a couple of paintings. I'm going to talk through the paintings with you, and then we'll get to the demo and drawing. All right, now we're sharing a few paintings with you, and let me just bring this up now to full screen. There we go. And hopefully you can see that Simone Vouet painting, this El Greco painting, and then finally, oops, sorry, it's let me zoom it back out there. There we go. There's the El Greco painting, the Simone Vouet painting, and then first up, this Velasquez painting. Really, really beautiful. So let's start with the Velasquez and go through it. You can see this painting hanging right now. Velasquez, a Spanish painter, very, very heavily associated with the Spanish court, the king's court in the 17th century, the court of Philip IV. And you can actually see a painting of Philip IV in the exhibition right now, hanging next to this portrait. But this is very typical of Velasquez's portraits. And what you see here is the way Velasquez was using light and dark very dramatically. Unusual for portraiture to have a lot of the subject's face drifting into darkness. And when you look at the subject's right eye here in this portrait of a man, you can see the way that right eye gets almost completely lost. It fades into the darkness and blends right into that blackness, that darkness of the hair. And that darkness of the hair blends into the mustache, and then the chin, the jaw, and then into the clothing as well. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about this dark manner, this really intense darkness where things that are in shadow just sink back into space, into the darkness. But then where you have the highlight is very intense and it pops right up to the surface. And that method is heavily associated with a movement called the Baroque. And the Baroque movement, which, you know, it's across Europe. It's not only in Spain or only in Italy. It works across Europe, but it really is epitomized by this use of tenebrism and this really both this high theatrical drama, but also this intense use of light and dark. So there you have the Spanish painter Velasquez. Here is the painter El Greco, Domenicos Theotokopoulos. Apologies to any of our Greek participants out there, but he was actually born on the island of Crete and moved to and studied in Italy, actually studied with a lot of the Venetian painters in Italy before settling in Spain and working for a lot of his career in Spain. And in Spain, they just referred to him as the Greek, El Greco. But El Greco is another exemplar of this bridge between mannerism and the Baroque, where you see these really exaggerated figures, these sinewy, twisting figures, twisting in space, very unusual compositions, very reminiscent of his teachers in Venice and part of the Mannerist school. But then you also see that deep darkness, that blackness that is pervasive throughout the entire work and throughout the entire canvas. And then the way you get these very, very bright lights, these really punctuated highlights. And that's what we're going to explore tonight as we draw in the dark manner, is laying in those deep darks and lifting out those bright highlights for dramatic effect. Now, the last painting, and this is the one I really want to focus on. It's actually a French painting, and oftentimes when you hear tenebrism or tenebrozzo, it'll be heavily associated with the Spanish and Italian painters. But here we have a French painter, Simone Vouet, and this beautiful painting you can also go see hanging right now at GOMA, called Woman Playing a Guitar. And again, it really epitomizes that Baroque drama and that use of tenebrism. So if I zoom in here, you'll see the way that you have that intense light and dark. You have that deep blackness in the background, and her hair just starts to emerge out of that darkness, and her chin, her neckline, her shoulder starts to emerge out of that darkness. And then you get that pop, that hot highlight, as though there's a strong, strong stage light or spotlight shining right down on her face, casting deep shadows under her brows, deep shadow from her nose that cuts right across her face, under her chin, across her neck, and over her shoulder as well. And so when we take our poses here tonight, when Rachel and Atticus take their poses, you're going to see that you're going to lose a lot of information. A lot of their body is going to just fade into the darkness. And we don't want you to be afraid of that darkness here tonight, y'all. We're going to really embrace the dark manner. We're going to embrace this tenebrism, and you're going to lay in that darkness and really begin to lift out those strong highlights from it to get that sense of Baroque drama in your drawings. All right, so there's just 3 paintings, the Velasquez, the El Greco, and the Vouet. All 3 of them right now, masterpieces from the Met, and all 3 of them you can go see right now over at GOMA. All right, now if we could switch it over to my desktop. All right, we're going to switch cameras again, and hopefully now everyone can see here the surface of my desk, which unlike everything else in my studio is bathed in light right now. Now, what we're going to show here is a couple of different methods that you can use to start to build up the darkness in your drawings in order to lift out the light. And I'm going to show you a method here using graphite primarily. Now, I know I've been using charcoal a lot for the last couple of weeks to make it very easy for you to see, but I want to show you a really interesting method using graphite. So I've got a soft, I've got a soft 4B graphite pencil here that's seen some things. You can see that's an old pencil of mine. I've also got a nice soft 6B pencil. So I've got a 4B and a 6B pencil, both soft. I also have a soft charcoal pencil and a piece of compressed charcoal, a compressed charcoal stick. So I'll be doing a little bit with each of these at the beginning just to show you some different methods. I also have right here something that you should always have whenever you are putting your drawing kit together, which are a few little scraps of sandpaper. And you should always have a bit of sandpaper mixed into your kit. It's a very, very useful tool. It's useful for sharpening your tools, but it's also useful what we're going to do here this evening, where we're going to actually lay some material down on the paper using the sandpaper rather than drawing directly on your sheet of paper. So I've got my sandpaper, I've got my charcoal, I've got my graphite, and then I have a couple of erasers, a couple of plastic erasers. And again, if your plastic erasers start to look like this, if they start to get black or completely coated with graphite like that, just slice them like I did here. I took a knife and I just sliced off that end, and now I've got a nice clean and sharp edge to that eraser that I can use. These vinyl erasers or plastic erasers, you can buy these all day long. They're all the same. You can buy them at an office supply store it's the last thing on earth that costs 49 cents. So don't be afraid to just cut them up and get nice clean edges to them. But I also have a little stick style plastic eraser. So this is a little click stick style plastic eraser. It's the exact same type of eraser as this. It's just in stick form for doing some finer erasure. Now, if you don't have a little click eraser like that, that's all right. Just take your knife and slice your plastic eraser so you have some good sharp edges that you can use there. All right, now the final thing that I have is another graphite pencil. And this time it's an H graphite pencil. And it's an H because it's a hard pencil. And there's a whole range of pencils. I've got a whole video on QAGOMA's YouTube channel about pencils, how to sharpen your pencils, the difference between one and another. H is the least hard. You can get 2H, 3H, 4H, 5H, and yet it's still a lot harder than my 4B or 6B. And I need that hard pencil for one of the methods that I'm going to show you. So any HB, old-fashioned #2 pencil, anything like that will work, as will a mechanical pencil. If you have a mechanical pencil laying around, you can grab a mechanical pencil, and that'll work for this next bit as well. All right, now let's talk through the method. I have 2 different types of paper. One of them is best for graphite, the other is best for charcoal. The paper that I have here, which is best for graphite, is ordinary white drawing paper, also referred to as sketch paper or cartridge paper. And I've got several sheets of that ordinary white drawing paper. But I also have here on top a sheet of baking paper. And I'm using baking paper because it's just a very, very accessible and low cost version of tracing paper, right? And so you can use this as well if you don't have any trace paper and you want to work in charcoal. You can work baking paper, or you can use a nicer sheet of trace paper if you have a pad of trace paper or something like that at home. That will work as well. All right, so I'm going to show you a method how we're going to lay in our darkness first and then begin to lift out our lights. And we're going to do that with the baking paper, with charcoal, and we're going to do that on the white drawing paper, the cartridge paper with graphite. For this evening, for this workshop, I am going to work primarily in graphite, but I'll show you both methods. Okay, let's begin with the graphite then, and I'll move this little sheet of baking paper out of the way. All right, now what we're going to do when we work on our graphite tonight, is we're going to work in two stages. I'm going to begin with my hardest pencil. All right, and for me, that's my H, but you go to your hardest pencil, whatever that is, or your mechanical pencil if you have that. And we're going to do our initial sketching in that hard pencil. And contrary to everything you've ever been told about sketching in pencil, I want you to put some weight on it, really lay into it. And what you're going to do is you're actually going to incise that sheet of paper. Incision and incising paper was a drawing method that was used for hundreds of years, not used very much anymore, but I'm going to show you how, a little method and a trick and why you might want to do it. So when you're drawing, I want you to really lean in and make some hard, dark marks, so much so that you're actually scarring your paper and incising your paper is just what I'm doing right there, really quickly and loosely like that. Because then what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to one of your soft pencils. Okay, and now I've got my 6B pencil there, and I'm going to take my piece of sandpaper. And now I'm going to take it and I'm just going to sand that pencil with the sandpaper and let it snow. Let it rain down darkness on my sheet of paper, just like that. All right. Black snow, is that a thing? Is that a movie? Maybe? I don't know. All right. So we're just going to let it rain down there, give it a good rub back and forth. And you can see how I'm getting this pile of powder, a pile of graphite powder now on my sheet of paper. Now, it is absolutely true that you can buy graphite powder. If you want to, you can go to art supply stores. It's sold as a specialty. You'll pay for it because it is sold as a specialty. But I prefer to work this way because then you're not throwing a lot of powder up and around either. Now, once you have it down like that, you're just going to very gently rub it in. So I'm going to take my finger now, and I'm just going to rub that graphite powder right into the surface. And hopefully you can see this on screen. I'm looking at my producer right now, but hopefully you can see quite clearly now that that hard dark line you made at first comes up as a light line. Right. What you're doing there is you're rubbing the graphite with the graphite, you're burnishing it, but because it's got that incision in the paper, the way the graphite behaves in those incisions is completely different from the way the graphite behaves just in the regular tooth of the paper. And you can quite clearly see the initial drawing you did there, but instead of seeing it as a dark line now, you read it as a light line. All right, it's a really interesting way of working. And then, so I did that hard pencil first and then soft graphite powder on top of it. And then what I'll be able to do as we get into our drawing. So imagine that initial drawing I did was a drawing of Atticus, right? Or Atticus and Rachel together. And I did some outlines, I did some contours and I mapped them out. Now I've gone over that all with my powder, and you see it didn't take very much graphite powder to make a nice big area of darkness there, right? So this is the basis of our tenebrism. And then I'll be able to start working subtractively. So now I'll be able to come in with my my eraser, my vinyl eraser, and I'll be able to cut back in and through because I can see those contour lines that I started with. And I'll be able to start pushing and pulling that graphite on the surface so I can start to build out those really, really bright highlights that I want against that darkness there. Now, that's the method that we're going to use to start to establish this high key contrast of light and dark. So you got that soft darkness of the graphite together with that harsh light of the spotlight coming down on top of it. All right. Now, if you want to get really fancy, those of you who have charcoal, if you want to enhance darks even further on top of this, you can actually take charcoal and you can sand a little bit of charcoal powder on there and you can rub that in to make an even more intense dark where you blend that charcoal and that graphite together. All right. And that's it. Now, I know that doesn't look like much now, but that is the method we're going to use. So again, that was incising the lines with a hard pencil, then using a soft pencil and sanding that graphite to create our field of darkness, and then lifting the darkness back out to create our highlights with our erasers. All right. And now again, if you have a nice stick style eraser, a nice small sharp eraser like that, it gives you some control where you can really get into some of your fine details and create some marks with that. You can do that with this eraser too. Again, just hit it with your knife to give you some nice sharp shapes. Okay. So that is the primary method that we're going to be using here, graphite with your sandpaper. But if you have charcoal and you want to work charcoal, I recommend that you try that on a trace paper or on the butcher's paper. Excuse me for a second. Sorry to blow into the microphone. Now, the reason that you'll do it on the butcher's paper or trace paper is because it enables you, because of the surface of that paper, it enables you to erase very, very effectively. Now, for this, you won't do the incision with the pencil first and then the charcoal. Instead, what you'll do here is just start with a charcoal line. So you can start with a charcoal line. You see there, doing my charcoal shapes, whatever it is, nice dark contours of Atticus and Rachel. And then again, I'm going to take my charcoal. I'm using one piece of sandpaper for my graphite. I'm going to use a separate piece of sandpaper for my charcoal here. And again, I'm just going to take my charcoal and I'm just going to sand it. And again, you can buy charcoal powder. It'll cost you, it's not cheap. Or if you want to, you just take a piece of sandpaper and take any charcoal pencil or compressed stick of charcoal and it'll work just as well. All right, just like that. So again, I'm raining down darkness on my sheet of paper, just like that. Okay, and now I'm going to use my finger and I'm just going to rub over it, just like that, to create that beautiful, beautiful dark field. And then within that dark field, you should still be able to see, I don't know if it's camera's picking it up, that ghost of the original lines that I drew, but I'm getting the thumbs up from my producer again. Thanks, Taya. So that's it. And then again, you can get in there with your eraser, all right, and you can subtract. You can lift out. Now, because you're working on that trace paper, butcher paper, you will be able to lift that out really quickly and really beautifully. You can make really strong lights with your plastic eraser. And again, if you have one of the stick style erasers, you can really get in and start to draw some light detail with that. And because of the quality of the surface of this baking paper or of trace paper, you can lift out 95% of the charcoal. It won't stain the paper, especially because you've just rubbed over it with that powder, which will enable you to lift those lights out very clearly. And again, you should be able to see those initial dark lines that you drew. They'll blend right in as you draw. Don't worry, you won't see them at the end. But as you draw, they'll blend right in really, really beautifully, and they'll still give you that guide. Now, oftentimes when people work using this method, which is called subtractive drawing, they just start drawing immediately with their erasers, and they're trying to find form with their erasers. So this is a method where you can find form with a contour line first, either graphite and graphite or charcoal and charcoal, and then use that mapping that you've done initially in order to build your light structure on top of it. All right, so those are the two methods we're going to use for our drawing in the dark manner here this evening. But again, the charcoal one is really, really beautiful, but I am going to go, I love the softness and just the flavor of the graphite. You can't erase the graphite as completely as you can the charcoal, but I actually quite love that quality of the line and the graphite, and it feels hazy and smoky and dark. And to me, it just exemplifies that that tenebroso, that darkness or mystery that the word is derived from. All right, so that's what we're going to do here this evening. I got through that pretty quickly. Do we have any questions that are popping up there? Wow. Okay, we got a big art historical question about the underlying conceptual reasons for this Baroque manner, for this tenebrism. And look, there are absolutely spiritual and religious connotations for this. There are absolutely driving forces, that are conceptual for this, that are specific to the time and place in which it was made. But of course, the Baroque as a kind of category is retrospective. We're looking back at these artists. Some of them knew one another, some of them didn't, some of them were working in the same country, some of them were working completely different countries, disparate from one another. But we see this movement that happens, at a certain time in a certain place in Europe, and then that gets categorized. There's something that was connecting these artists, and a lot of it was this high key kind of drawing and painting, which was driven by some of it by paint technology and drawing technology and paper technology, and some of it was driven really by conceptual and religious belief. Absolutely. All right, now let's get on to doing our first drawing. Okay. Now, we are going to, before we switch over to the stage and we take a look at Atticus and Rachel here this evening, preparing your paper. This, unlike other methods, the methods we've used for the last few weeks, you don't have to do a lot of preparation. You're just starting off with your blank sheet of paper. And if you're working in graphite like I am, you're just starting off with your hard pencil. Now, again, what's important about this when you start off and do your drawing, though, is you are not lightly sketching across the surface, but you are pressing a little bit. Again, you're trying to create a bit of an incision. Now, that doesn't mean you have to, white knuckle it and really grind away at your paper. Just putting a little bit of weight on it so you can really feel it dragging and cutting into the paper will be enough. So you can still work quickly, you can still work loosely, just press a little bit harder than you normally would. And the first time you rub over it with your graphite powder, you'll get a sense of how those incisions are working with your graphite. All right, so we're going to begin, and I'll show you my process as we go through this first drawing. So I'm just beginning with an ordinary blank white sheet of paper, as you are, and now we're going to switch over to having a look at Rachel and Atticus, and I am going to zoom right in on them for you. All right, nice, y'all. And I'm just going to come across a little bit here, but I am going to zoom in. I'm going to do a little bit of cropping, but I want you to really be able to see quite clearly. There we go. And let me do a little bit of focusing. There, that looks pretty good. How are we looking there on screen? Okay, now, one of the things to think about, and I'm going to walk into frame here very, very briefly. One of the things to think about is the light and shadow and the drama of the light and shadow. So as I reach into frame, maybe I should stand over here on the other side, y'all. If you're looking here at Atticus and you're seeing that you can see some of the information here in his chest, in his shoulder, but look at the hotness of the light there on his pec. The light, the way it comes across his ribs, his thoracic arch there in his abdomen, or comes down his forearm, or the way the light cascades down over Rachel's shoulder. So what the challenge is here is let these areas of mid-tone and dark all blend together into darkness. So really what you're doing in this drawing is only popping out those hottest highlights that you see. Now, when you start this drawing, let's start with line. So getting your nice hard pencil, your white sheet of paper, let's take 5 minutes. And let's take those 5 minutes, and this is just a first drawing, will take longer as we go on through this evening. Let's take 5 minutes and just do a quick contour sketch. You might draw both of their bodies, you might draw one of them, or you might even crop and draw a part of one of them. All right, so let's begin there. 5 minutes, y'all, and I will start my drawing as well. Okay. Now, as you're drawing, it can be useful even to draw contours around the shadows. So typically people will draw contours around the edges of the forms. So the edge of the arm, the edge of the leg, whatever it is. But you can also trace the contour of those shadows. So as you're looking at their bodies, or you're looking at, for example, at Atticus's chest, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually draw a contour line that delineates the edge of the highlight. And that can come in useful when you're coming back later to put your value in, to pull out your highlights, that you have those contours. All right, so I'm gonna go, you might even hear me scratching away here, and I'm gonna just do a little bit of Atticus's upper body. And I'm really laying in hard now. I'm laying down some, whoops, I was laying in so hard, I just broke my pencil. All right, I'm gonna sharpen that up really quickly. Do it again. All right, so I'm still working really quickly. The difference is I'm working quickly, but with some pressure, with some weight. All right, there we go. And again, I know you're putting a lot of pressure on, so if you make a mistake or you're unhappy with one of your lines, just redraw it, just go right over it again. I used to tell my students that if you could say the word line in the time it takes you to draw a line, you're going too slow. All righty. Let's take another 2 minutes, y'all. Just a quick layout contour. You'll have more time on other drawings, but let's just do that to get this one started so you get a feel of what this type of working looks like and feels like when you use the powdered graphite or powdered charcoal. Okay. Another minute. If any other questions pop up, just holler them at me. Yeah, you know, paper stumps, tortillon or rolled paper stumps. Look, it really is a personal taste. I do not like to use them, and I typically don't recommend them. Not that I have any beef with the manufacturers of those things, but I find that oftentimes when my students use them, they tend to grind their friable materials, their charcoals, their chalks, their pastels, their graphites down into the paper so much that I actually find it not very useful, either aesthetically or practically. So I think you're much better off just using your finger if you want to do a little bit of blending, or going in a very old-fashioned way, using a little piece of chamois is a really nice a nice way of blending, and much softer than those paper stumps, those tortillon. Good question. All right. Okay, we are going to switch out from their pose, although Rachel and Atticus are going to hold the pose, and then we're going to come back to them in just one moment here. All right, so we're going to switch over to my camera again, and you're going to see that I've got a little quick sketch there of Atticus's upper torso. I've done it really quickly and very heavily. And again, I just want to show this to you. Once you've got that sketch, then you're just going to go to town on your pencil, and one of your nice soft pencils, with your sheet of sandpaper, and get some of that graphite down. Now, it probably won't take as much as you think it will. So you can see I've given Atticus some significant chest hair there. All right. But once you've got it, it's like those old magnetic toys, you know, where you drag the hair around on their faces. But then once you've got it on there, then you're just going to take that and just start rubbing that in and go right across your form. And again, you should be able to see, and I'm going to see if I get a nod from my producer here, when you should be able to see quite clearly that now the light is starting to lift out, that you're going to see those lines which were dark on a white page before, now are starting to catch that silvery graphite. Is going to catch the light, and it's going to start to read as a light line on a dark ground. And that's what you want. Okay, let's switch back over to Atticus and Rachel. All right, and I'm going to keep sanding. I'm going to keep adding more graphite to mine, and you should do the same. You'll hear me scratching away there on the microphone. So I'm just adding a little bit more graphite so that I can get in there next with my my erasers and go to the next part. Now, don't only do this where the body is. Don't worry about the contours of the body. Again, you want to have that nice darkness where the body's sinking into the darkness. So you want to get that darkness around the body and behind the body. You want to get a sense of the figure and the ground. So lay it down and you should get a beautiful 50, 60, maybe even 70% grade, depending on the type of pencil that you have, which is the brand of pencil, the type of graphite it is. There's all sorts of variables there, but you should be able to get a nice, lovely, lush kind of a gray there. Nice dark gray. All right. Okay, let's switch as y'all are doing that. Let's switch back to me one last time, and I promise I won't interrupt your pose again. Okay. Now, I've laid that down. You can see it's got that beautiful smokiness, that kind of haziness about it. And now I can come back in and I can really hit my highlights. So now I can quite clearly see where I have that highlight right there on Atticus's chest, on his pectoral muscle, and the way that pulls down into his armpit. And I'm just going to come in and really start to define that. It rides right up over the nipple and then down again and up like that. So I'm just going to hit that really strong highlight. Then there's a cast shadow from his pectoral muscle down onto his thorax, onto his rib cage. So I'm going to leave that as a dark, but I'm going to come around and show how that starts to show the rib and work like that. All right, and you should be able to see the way this starts to organize the form of the body because I'm showing the shape of the light and dark in the body. So really, really quickly, I'm going to start to draw those light shapes and those light forms by erasing them back out of the surface. And I'm just going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep erasing and keep building it up. Now, if you make a mistake, just take your pencil, sand a little bit more graphite if you're unhappy with it, and rub it right back in again, and then go at it with your eraser. But try to just hit those hot highlights and really let the rest of the form sink into that darkness. All right, let's switch back to Atticus and Rachel for just another 5 minutes. And again, this is just a warm up. So let's take another 5 and really try to get in there and pull some of the highlights out now. If your eraser starts to get gunked up or gummed up, just scrub it clean on a scrap piece of paper, or again, take your knife and just cut right back through it with your knife in order to get a nice clean edge again. Now, yep. They're not. Okay, so if that's happening, you might have to try pressing a little bit harder when you do your initial. So somebody was saying that their lines aren't showing up as that nice light silvery, giving that light silvery effect. And that's true. You might need to put a little bit more pressure on when you do your original drawing, because otherwise you'll just rub it right away when you put your other graphite on. Again, you really have to bear down with much more pressure than you will be used to doing when you draw with your pencil. All right, I'm just going to do a quick little erasure study here too. And again, keep this quick and loose. You'll have a little bit more time to develop later on this evening. And squint your eyes. I always find that helps. If you just squint down a little bit, it helps you to isolate the light and shadow and get away from seeing the detail. All right, and I'm coming right down to the abdomen now. Got a strong cast shadow from the bottom of the thoracic arch. But again, what's important here too is that I'm going to leave that where there is darkness, like where Atticus's arm goes into darkness, I'm just going to leave that edge as dark. I'm not going to go in and try to delineate that edge. I've got my light contour line there, and otherwise I'm just going to let it sink in. And this, it seems like a really simple process. It will take a little bit of doing to get used to the way that this works and the way that it feels. All right. Let's take another 2 minutes on this, y'all. You can always just take the edge of your finger and do a little rubbing if you need to get a little bit more softness on the edges of those forms, because you've got all that beautiful powdered graphite down on the surface. Now, for those of you who have a little charcoal, it's also an opportunity, even if you're working in graphite, you can use a little bit of that powdered charcoal if you really want to emphasize some dark passages in the work. Okay. How's everybody doing out there, huh? Got a sense? Busy drawing, good. Now, another good thing that you can do is lay in some really dark behind the figure. So you get a strong emphasis of the highlights that are on the figure against the darkness that exists in the background behind the figure. So anywhere you're erasing out those bright highlights, try to juxtapose those bright highlights against a strong dark, that just like we saw in the Velasquez and the Vouet. All right, another minute. Not even giving y'all a whole minute. And again, this is just a warm up. We'll go into a longer pose next. All right, y'all. Well done. Let's give Atticus and Rachel a little break there to stretch it out. And you can pop that camera right back over to my demo camera now. Okay. And there in the demo camera, hopefully you can see the way that my drawing, I can't really see the screen from here, but how's that? Is that coming through all right over there? Yeah. So hopefully you can see the way that my drawing is developing now. So all that I've done is I've got that that graphite. I've added a bit more to darken, you know, and I would keep that darkness actually blending right up and into the body and pushing that darkness right up against those highlights, so you get that dramatic high key light and dark effect. Now what I would probably do is add even more graphite to build up even more darkness, but ultimately that's what you're after, is that strong sense of light and shadow, light and dark, so it feels like the figure is just emerging up out of that murkiness, out of that darkness. All right, now as you go forward with these drawings, if you're having a little bit of trouble managing a large drawing, try scaling down a little bit to make it a little bit more manageable, so you can get in there and get some of the shapes that you need to get. And that's the last thing I want to emphasize. Even though I didn't spend a lot of time refining these particular shapes, the shape carries the form. So if your shapes are not very precise, then your form will fall apart. You'll lose structure. So oftentimes people think it's the line. You need to have the line to carry the form, but it's actually the shape of each one of those lights, which creates the shape of each one of those shadows. That's what's going to give you the form of the pec, the form of the rib cage, the form of the belly or the abdomen or whatever it is. It's the shape of that light and shadow. Good. And this is just white. This is the cheapest white cartridge paper that I could buy just at the this just came from the office supply store. There is nothing special about this paper at all. It is barely one step up from copier paper. All right. Okay, but it looks good, right? With this dark manner and doing that, rubbing in those powdered materials is and I should say this, it's such a completely different method than taking, for example, the edge of your pencil and shading in like that. It just has a completely different feel because as you rub that powder in, the even on a very low quality paper, still the texture of that paper will come through, the tooth, the feel of that powder as it inundates that paper, and it's got a beautiful material presence to it that it won't have if you're doing a traditional kind of scrubbing like that, or even hatching or cross hatching. It'll have a much softer and far more dramatic kind of impact like that. All right. Okay, let's go on. Y'all ready for a slightly longer pose? I'm getting a big thumbs up. All right. Is the heater good? Warm enough? Beautiful. Okay, let's switch back to the big camera again, our model camera. Okay. All right, and let's do another pose. I'm actually going to have the two of you move towards the front of the stage a little bit, like right there. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And Rachel, I'll have you just there. That's good. Excellent. Excellent. That's really, really nice. Okay, so now you can really clearly see here, and I'm going to still keep it in kind of tight. I might come down just a bit. So we come right across above Atticus's eyes there. There we go. Really nice. Come over. Okay. Let me just get a little bit of focus. Focus right in on Rachel's knees. There we go. Now, really look yet again at the way that their bodies are moving in and out of the light and darkness. So you can quite clearly see how the whole left side of Rachel's body is just fading into darkness. But look at the little bit of light on the stage behind her. If you bring out that little bit of highlight on the stage behind her hips, then that will give you the dark contour of her hips and locate her again in space. You can see the same thing with Atticus as his thigh comes down and starts to disappear into darkness, or his leg goes up in darkness, but you get a little bit of light on the stage. You can use those movements. And then really look at the way, for example, Atticus's ankle and his foot come right out of the darkness and into the light beautifully, and then up his torso, how it disappears back into darkness again. So think about, again, that tenebrism, that Baroque high drama of the passage of the body in and out of the light. Think about the simplicity of Vouet's Woman Playing a Guitar, but how intense and dramatic and emotional that becomes because of the lighting on it. All right, let's go 15 minutes on this. Good for y'all. And then we are going to do a long drawing to bring us home at the end, but we'll do another 15-minute study. So again, step by step through the process. Begin, if you're working in the graphite, begin with a hard, sharp line, really hard, really sharp line. And again, lay into it a little bit, put a little bit of weight into it, and really score your paper, incise your paper. And you want to keep that quick. That contour, again, should only take you the first 3 or 4 minutes to lay it in. It's just a guide for you. Then go start sanding, start creating your graphite powder and rubbing that into the surface so that you can begin lifting out and drawing the light back in. For those of you who are working charcoal, start with that charcoal line. Again, put a little bit of weight on it, make it a nice heavy line there on your paper to begin with, and then go to your charcoal powder and rub that in so that you still see that dark line there in the shadow. And again, start carving back into it and lifting out your lights. This is complex. Obviously, if you look at this whole pose, you've got a lot happening between Rachel's knees and her arms and her hand and her chest and her mask and her face, and Atticus's legs and the way one leg is bent and foreshortened in the foot. That's a lot of information. You might want to really zoom in. You might just want to draw just Rachel's hand and knees. You might want to zoom in and do just a portrait study. You might want to zoom in and do just a foot. Nobody ever wants to do just a foot. I'm the only one who ever wants to do just a foot. But, you can zoom right in and just do a piece of this too. Don't feel like you've got to describe the entire thing. Now, I will reiterate what I said just a few minutes ago, but it's such an important point. And it's a point I made a few draw-alongs ago in another one of these workshops, which is that point about drawing shapes. Remember that contour line is an abstraction, right? We don't walk around through the world with lines floating around our bodies. We perceive contour because we perceive changes in light and shadow, changes in color, things that are closer to us or further away. There's a depth of field perception. And so we perceive that there are edges to things. And the way that we abstract those edges is as a line, a contour line. Excuse me, having a sip of coffee. Now, line is one abstraction. What's far less abstract and more and easier to understand is shape, because you see quite clearly in their bodies, even though you see very few lines, although you might see a fold in skin, a wrinkle, something like that, not on these two, but on, ordinary humans, right? But you will see shapes. You'll quite clearly see the dimple in Rachel's elbow, right, where the muscle and the bone come together and create that clear shape, that clear dimple. And that's something you can very clearly describe as a shape, as a dark shape surrounded by light. So I'm asking you to really reframe your thinking. You're starting with line as a way of mapping, but then you're really getting in and exploring shape and really trying to delineate those shapes with light and dark. All right, I haven't even started drawing y'all yet. I'm just yammering. All right, I've got my H pencil. Good. And I'm just gonna do, maybe I'll do a quick little, since I said it, I'll do a quick little foot and calf study here. Sorry? Screenshot. Yeah. And these videos are all, QAGOMA has been so wonderful to work with, and they've been so good about taking these, and they put them all up on YouTube. They're all Auslan interpreted, and so the videos that Rachel and Atticus have posed for already, they're all up online. They've been getting thousands of views. Obviously, people are working through them and maybe looking at them time and time again. You can pause them, and so you can really use them as a resource, y'all. It's so good to have y'all live with us tonight as we broadcast and being part of this, but it's something that you can return to again and again. All right. Oh, look, yeah. There's a question about what grade of sandpaper I use, and the answer is whatever's on my workbench. But look, you can use something as rough as a 60 grit, all the way up to, 220, 240 grit. That's fine. The one I'm using here this evening is an 80 grit. But if it gets too fine, you might have a little bit of trouble, but it's almost impossible for it to get too coarse. So any sandpaper from 60 all the way up to 180 to 240 should work just fine. You can actually buy, if you have considerable disposable income, you can buy little sandpaper paddle blocks from the art supply store. If you want to spend more money than you've ever spent on sandpaper before, you can do that, or you can just take a scrap of sandpaper and it works just as well. Now you should have already be well past doing your contours, or you should be finishing those contours now. Don't want to make anybody feel bad. And then starting to do your powder. All right, so starting to do your sanding and laying in your darkness next. All right, there we go. All right. Okay, I've got a quick contour there of a leg and a foot. So I am going to start, don't worry, we're not going to cut away. We're gonna keep Rachel and Atticus on screen for y'all, but I'm just talking you through it as I do it, so you get a sense of my rhythm. And I'm gonna have to sharpen my pencil again since I ground off all of it. And then I'm going to add my graphite powder. And I'm doing this again this time. Last time I did it with a 4B pencil. This time I'm using a 6B pencil. It's a different brand pencil, and it's actually not as dark as the last one I was using, even though it's a softer pencil. And again, from brand to brand, from pencil to pencil, every pencil manufacturer has different formulas and different methods of building their pencils, concocting their pencils. And you'll notice big differences as you move from one brand to another. This is in no way something which is standardized. Okay. I've got a good pile of graphite there on my page now. And I'm rubbing it in. When it comes to basic white drawing paper like this, just what's typically called cartridge paper, you're looking at a wood pulp paper, a cellulose paper. And so it really is from paper to paper. The changes are the way that that paper is made and the type of screens that are used when the paper is made. So some of it will be a little bit rougher, have more of a tooth, some less. Some you'll notice there'll be a difference from one side of the paper to the other. So really it's again a personal preference thing, but you know, this isn't a high quality heavyweight. It's not 110 GSM white drawing paper made by you know, by artisans in Italy or anything like that. And you don't really need a very high quality paper. And the same with the baking paper and the trace paper. You don't need a really high quality paper to get really, really beautiful results. All right. We are, oh boy, time is just flying here. We've got about 6 more minutes, y'all. Holding up all right? Okay, good. About 6 more minutes. And now, another question about kneaded erasers. Look, your kneaded eraser is going to get gummed up really, really quickly, especially if you're working with the graphite. Kneaded erasers work by just literally adhering to the particles of, they don't work by friction, right? They work because the particles of your pencil or charcoal stick to the kneaded eraser. And so they slowly will just get filled up, gummed up with all of that powder. And the kneaded eraser you will find is you'll struggle with actually a plastic eraser where you're abrading the surface and using that friction on the surface. You'll find much more effective for this method than a kneaded eraser. All right, I forgot what I was doing briefly. All right, so I have now moved over into doing my erasure because I'm talking and working a little bit more slowly than y'all, I'm sure. Everybody's probably done already at home, huh? They're just sitting and waiting for me. All right. Again, as you're Yeah, you know, the thing about graphite is it will actually, we've got a question about just erasing the graphite and different struggles with erasing the graphite. Graphite's a mineral, of course, you know, it's a mineral powder, and it's slick, it's metallic, you know, and so it will actually gum up your eraser really, really quickly. And I find it's always best to have an extra little scrap of paper sitting right next to my paper, and what I can do there is just a few scrubs on my drawing with the eraser, and then a few scrubs on the scrap piece of paper just to clean the eraser and recharge it a bit. And then I can go at it again in my drawing and work back and forth. because you will find that your eraser does get, with especially those of you who are working with the graphite, that it will sort of get slicked over, for lack of a better word. It almost gets glazed, and then you've got to pull a little bit of that graphite back off of it again. And it'll come. Practice, y'all. Practice, practice. All right. Let's go another, how's 3 more minutes sound, y'all? I'm getting thumbs up. All right, now as you come into your final few minutes, again, really try to emphasize that strong contrast, like right on the edges of your light and dark, and where you want to have those brightest, hottest lights, and where you want it to fade out completely into darkness. Again, emphasize that drama, that theatricality of it. Those of you working in graphite can always come in at the very end, again, even with a little bit of charcoal powder, and add a little bit of charcoal powder if you really want to create some very, very strong darks in contrast to those lights and to that graphite. Last minute, y'all. All right, it's quiet out there. Everybody is drawing. And let's break. Thank you so much, Rachel and Atticus, for that one. We're going to give them a little, just a minute or two here to shake it out and relax before we go into the final drawing. Now, if you want to take a look at my foot, we can switch it over right there, and there you'll get a little sense of how I was starting to develop, oops, as my pencil rolls across it, the foot drawing. So again, I started, you can even see the light lines still coming through there on the contour edges that I first described. Still very sketchy, very loose. I ran out of time, but I was going to start erasing out that light on the stage, which emphasized Atticus's thigh there. And then to come down into the foot, I would have done even more detailed development down there into the toes. But it just shows how it's starting to create that contrast. Okay, let's flip it back over to me again. And I'm going to come in and sit with y'all for just a moment, if you don't mind. I'm going to sit in the pool of light here. All right, am I back? I'm getting a thumbs up. All right, good to see y'all again. Sorry, I know you've just seen my hands floating in there for the last half hour or so. Okay, we're gonna go into a longer pose now, and we've got just about 25 minutes left in the class. All right, in the workshop here this evening. So we're gonna get just about 20 minutes of drawing time. All right, and a 20-minute pose is a good long pose. Typically, when you're working with life models and you're doing life drawing, 20 minutes is about the maximum that you'll ever see a single pose. Now, there are some life models out there who will hold poses for longer than that, but you've got to think about the body and think about the stresses on the body. If you've never done any modeling, holding a pose for 5 minutes without moving, 10 minutes without moving, 20 minutes, you're really getting to the upper reaches of where it can even be sustainable or comfortable. Comfortable is probably the wrong word, right? So we are going to have Atticus and Rachel get into a more comfortable pose, a reclining kind of a pose, something which will be easier for them to hold for the final 20 minutes. And I want you to really be thoughtful now about what you're going to zoom in on, what you're going to focus in on, and how you're really going to exaggerate and emphasize the dark manner, where the darkness is the star of the show here. And you've got that little bit of light just coming through to punctuate that darkness, but you should get that sense in your drawing of it just sinking into the dark. So again, we'll zoom right in on them. Think about how you want to compose it, what aspects of them you draw or don't want to draw. Just like in my last drawing, you might just draw a foot. You might just do a portrait study. You might, go on just one element like that. Don't feel obligated to have just the full body of Rachel and the full body of Atticus floating in this huge sea of paper, right? Zoom right in and be thoughtful about that. You'll remember from the Vouet as well as from the Velasquez, they were very tightly cropped images, and you see that a lot. A lot of the Baroque pictures are quite claustrophobic even. They feel theatrical and staged, and the darkness is closing in against this light, which is pushing out against it. So we're going to try to really exaggerate that, really emphasize that tenebrism in this final drawing. Really keep playing with the powder method of, sanding and scraping and rubbing those powders in and lifting them back out. I know it's a very, very different way of drawing if you haven't used that before. Any of you out there who've used pastels, artist soft pastels, it's a beautiful way to draw with soft pastels too. You can sand soft pastels, and then you can even lift them and push them around with brushes, with stiff brushes. So there's lots of ways you can use these powdered techniques, which doesn't require you to go and find powdered pigments or powdered materials. A bit of sandpaper and what you have in your drawer will work just fine. All right, let's get into this final pose, this final drawing now. And let's have a probably reclining. Let's get yourselves comfortable. Rachel, maybe we'll have your head coming up this way this time. All right, perfect. And Atticus, we'll just have you move a little bit more to your left into the light a bit more. And Rachel, actually, could you scooch your whole body down towards the wall a bit more? There we go. Nice. All right. So for those of you who are with us now in our foreshortening week and talking about the foreshortening, if you were with me for that previous workshop, so it'll be a good chance for you to revisit that foreshortening. I'm going to zoom right in now, very, very tight. So we get that strong light and dark. Again, you might choose one of their bodies or you might choose both of them to go with here. And then let's dive in and let's actually, I might change you again. Sorry, y'all. Rachel, I might actually have you roll up onto your side instead. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. That's perfect. Nice. Okay. Is that comfortable? Thumbs up. Okay. There we go. All right, let me get a strong focus here. Beautiful, y'all. You have almost exactly 20 minutes on this drawing. All right. So long sustained pose. I know 20 minutes sounds like a lot, but it will go very, very quickly. So as you're drawing, again, squint your eyes. Think about that strong, strong highlight that's hitting Atticus's fingers, his shoulder, his ear, his forehead, his cheek there. Think also as you're looking at Rachel, think about that strong highlight on her hip, that beautiful highlight on her hip, highlight on her shoulder there, coming down her arm and across her face. So you can really try to emphasize and exaggerate those highlights. And then where you see Atticus's back come down into mid-tone, let that all wash away into shadow. You're not going to get in there and give a lot of light or detail. You don't want it to feel like there's as much highlight in his back as there is in his shoulder, his arm, his fingers. So again, squint down on it. Think about where you have those hottest, brightest lights, and those are the things you really want to emphasize. Begin again with your contour drawing. And for those of you working in graphite like I am, start with your hard pencil and get some hard contour down there. Again, they can serve as a guidepost when you start putting your powder and your value in. Okay, and I'm going to do a little drawing too. And I think this time, I don't want to sit in front of the camera. I'm going to pass right in front of the camera, y'all. Sorry. There we go. Okay, and you might hear me scratching away again. And I've got my H pencil out. And I chose an H pencil. Normally, if I were doing this, I probably would have used a 4H pencil, something even quite a bit harder. But I know not a lot of people have 4H pencils just laying around, where you might have an H or an HB. And that's why I chose that. And it will work. But again, a really hard pencil makes that process of doing that initial incising of the paper easier. If you have any other questions that pop into your minds as we are going through this this final drawing, feel free to just pop them into the chat, and Taya can relay them to me. All right. What's that? Busy drawing. Yeah, should absolutely be busy drawing. You got your whole lives to type. Let's get some drawing done. No, you shouldn't have to rub out there was a question about some people still struggling to get that lighter line when they do the initial do the initial rubbing of the powder. Typically that really will come down to the hard pencil that you're using and the amount of strength you're using when you do your initial contour. And the more that you do really incise it down into your paper, the more that you'll see that light line pop for you. It also has to do with the softness of the pencil you're using for your powder. So if you're using a really nice, soft, dark pencil, that'll emphasize that light line even more. And it might just be to experiment a little bit. I know that there's a lot of, I'm using artist grade pencils. There's a lot of different pencils out there on the market. It might just be experimenting a little bit with different pencils that you might be using. What makes a graphite pencil is that it's a mixture of graphite and clay. But a lot of pencils out there are using other fillers in them. If they're not artist grade pencils, then they might have other materials mixed in with them, which aren't going to work quite as well for this method. Okay, and I'll just, again, as we're drawing here, sorry for walking in front of the camera, y'all. As we're drawing, I will just keep you abreast of where I am in the process too. So I just walked back in front of the camera because I just did a very quick sketch, quick contour sketch. Let's keep it on the models for now. And now I'm sharpening my 6B pencil yet again, so that I can start adding my 6B powder. All right, I've got a good bit of lovely, deep, dense graphite powder on my surface now, and I'm giving it a good rub. And for this drawing, because it's my last drawing of the evening, I'm actually going to get even more of that graphite powder, and I'm going to push it right out to the edges of my sheet of paper. Now, what the you will probably have noticed, depending on where you are working at home or wherever you are to do these drawings, that it does get a little messy when you start working with charcoal powders and graphite powders. There is no safe surface in your world. Everything will get a little layer of soot or grime on it. And now I'm actually taking my craft knife and I'm actually cutting my plastic eraser again. Just as I'm starting to do my erasure, I want to get a nice, fresh, sharp, dark edge to it. Apologies again for passing in front of y'all. I'm not on screen, am I? Okay, thanks. Now I'm squinting down, really squinting my eyes and focusing on those bright, bright highlights and the strong contrast between the bright highlights and the dark. I'm also seeing where the bright highlights run right together in the same way that I'm seeing where the darkness runs together. So as I draw Rachel's hip and her arm, I see that the strong highlight on her arm and the strong highlight on her hip are running right into one another. You have to also be a bit brave with your scrubbing. I know that when you start getting in there with your plastic eraser, don't slow down or be too too precious about it at first. Get in there and really lift some of that graphite or charcoal out so you get strong shapes. And then you can refine those shapes. Again, it's easy to add a bit more powder if you need to add a bit more dark so that you can refine the shape, just like it's easy to erase it back out of the surface again. All right. All right, y'all, we have about 10 more minutes. Getting to the end. Again, the shape carries the form. So scrub out quickly to establish those lights and then refine them. Try to get those shapes to really feel the light cascading across the body. This is a really, really nice way to use graphite, especially for those of you out there joining us who really like to work with graphite, who prefer graphite, who tend to work in a linear manner with a really soft molded shading. This is a nice, really, really nice way to expand your just your vocabulary with graphite, the way that you approach it. All right. Now, at this point, what you should be doing is really deciding. I always preach responsive drawing. Let your drawing tell you what's important about your drawing, what's really coming through as the really meaningful or matterful part of your drawing, and respond to it. Right. So take a moment to look at your drawing as we come into your last few minutes here. Think about where you want to bring emphasis. What things do you really want to highlight in your drawing, literally and figuratively? And start to really amplify those things. All right, y'all, we're coming up on your final 5 minutes. And the final 5 minutes of Draw Along with the Dead. So all right, y'all, you have exactly 5 more minutes to finish these drawings up. Now's the time you can also come back in again, as I said, um, laying in a little bit more of the darkness if you feel like you've lost too much of the darkness, or you want to come in at this stage and really emphasize some of the dark passages, make them a little bit stronger, pull the darkness right up against the light passages in your drawing. Now is a time when you can really bring that emphasis in, so you get that really strong high key contrast. And even though I'm working in graphite, I'm going to do that exact same thing that I mentioned to y'all at the beginning when I was doing the demo. And now I'm sharpening up my charcoal pencil. And I'm going to take a little bit of charcoal powder and I'm going to add a bit of charcoal to it. All right. And hopefully when we see all your drawings, and Shannon will come in at the end to tell you again how to share your drawings with us. Thank you again to everybody who's been tagging me in your drawings and sharing them with me on social media, on Instagram. It's wonderful to see what you're working on, to look at it. I know that that Atticus and Rachel love seeing them too, seeing how you're translating each one of these challenges through the workshops in your drawing. So please keep doing that. Okay, I'm going to give you about 3 more minutes now. All right, now I'm going to show you at the very end here. I'll give you a little bit of peek into what I've been working on at the very end. But again, I'll give you a little peek at what I've been working on, but we do want to also see what all of you have been working on. Final minute, y'all. And we're out. All right, Rachel and Atticus, thank you very much. Please, wherever you are, help me give Rachel and Atticus a round of applause, not just for tonight, but for this whole series. All right, just really quickly, I think we can pop over and you can see, oh, you already popped it on there. You can see really quickly how I was going about that drawing. Sorry, I didn't have a lot of time. I wasn't drawing the entire time. If I would have gonna take a little bit more time on this drawing, what I would do is even add more darkness here and add more darkness here. I'd add more powder and keep building up that darkness so that I get that strong contrast between what's happening in the light of the face, the light of the breast, the light of the arm, and what's happening in that dark shadow otherwise. All right, let's pop it back over here to me. Hey. All right. Oh, well, we got to get the right camera, y'all. Am I back? I'm zoomed into my knee. that's a good tip. All right, let's zoom back out again. Hey, there's our whole scene. All right. Nice. And I'm just going to step back in to say a final and very fond farewell to y'all. And if you give me the thumbs up that I'm back in the light, I'm back in the light. Okay. Hey, thank you so much for joining me again for Draw Along with the Dead and looking at some really different and unusual techniques for handling foreshortening, wet grounds, dry grounds, building up that the softness that we did last week, building up the darkness that we did tonight, working with your pencils in unusual ways and different methods of approaching each one of these materials. It's been a lot of fun to be here in my studio and reaching out to y'all and working with you and just drawing with you. And I hope we get many, many more chances to do it. One more very intense thank you to Atticus and Rachel for volunteering and being here, and to Taya for helping produce this whole thing. She's off camera. And wherever you are, keep drawing, y'all. And thank you so much. And thank you to Shannon and the team at QAGOMA. And I'm sure I will be bumping into you at the European Masterpieces show from the Met. The European Masterpieces from the Met show is what I mean to say. Please share your drawings with us again. Tag us in those drawings and let us see what you've been working on. All right. From here in my studio in Chelmer, good night, y'all.